Welcome, everyone. Hello, Pat.
Hey, Pearl. We have another interesting and exciting show today. Oh my
Absolutely.
God.
How are you today?
Love it. I am doing great. It's good to be inside on a hot summer day.
Absolutely.
And
Huh?
I'm so excited about the guests that we have today. And I just want to say welcome to our listeners who may be joining us for the first time. We really appreciate you joining us. And for those who are live and those who may be watching the replay, Town Square Talk is a passion of Pearl and myself that came about from the concerns and issues that we started hearing from our friends, family, and customers about the uneasiness and the new normals that have been created because of COVID-19. And we decided to put this talk show together to bring topics of concern that would help everyone in our circles thrive and come out on the other side shining because of the information and because of the knowledge and connections that we can provide. So we're so happy that you're here with us.
Why don't you introduce yourself a bit, Pat?
So Pat, Alva-Kraker, I'm the CEO of Majestic Coaching. I am a business strategist. I work with women entrepreneurs who have businesses in real estate and in IT who are looking for clarity on their best path to scaling their business consciously with ease and grace. You can learn more about me at majesticcoachinggroup.com.
And I am Pearl Peng, founder and CEO of Benchmark Maven, a strategy consulting company passionate and dedicated to growth and evolution. We work with visionary and authentic C-suite leaders, business owners, entrepreneurs, and professionals who are engaged in their personal awakening and are seeking to achieve greater outcomes in their careers and personal lives in new, perhaps a bit unconventional and innovative ways. And to find out more about me and my company, Benchmark Maven, please visit my website at benchmarkmaven.com. And I'd like to take this opportunity now to introduce our guest, Mr. Alex Barron. Alex has been a native El Paso, Texan, and have lived in quite a few places, including Mexico and Bay Area in California. Since 1990, Alex has studied and graduated with a master's degree at Stanford University. And from 2001 till today, he's been working to advise clients for their investment strategy, starting by working for the company Franklin Templeton Investments, and then moving on to JMP Securities, an agency trading group. And in 2010, Alex started to start his own company very successfully with Housing Research Center, advising folks with housing needs and demands. And in 2014, he was sort of asked to start how to become financially free. So he started a couple more companies, including the Financial Freedom and Success Institute, Options, 12 investment clubs for any other investment ideas, and the Dare to Dream Foundation. Alex, you are a busy man with the Diamond Crest Capital as well. So, Alex, we are so happy that you are with us today. And let me make sure that you are showing the video here. And ta-da!
Hello, ta-da! Welcome,
Hi.
Alex, from one El Pasoan to another.
How are you today?
We are doing great.
Great. Well, good to see you and Pearl. Thanks for the invitation. And I hope that this talk will be of much value to all of your
Oh,
listeners.
yes.
Oh, I have no doubt.
I have,
I'm going to
yes.
start with this question here. Well, Alex, I know you have this personal motto, dare to dream, right? And you love your exotic cars and traveling and music, dancing, and so on. That's really good because I love dancing myself. But the first question I'd like to start with today is this. What is this most important asset in the financial crisis and today we're facing in COVID-19 can be considered as one?
A lot of people would probably think, it might be my savings, it might be my investments, it might be my business. But in reality, what I tell people is the most important asset, no matter whether it's in a time of crisis or in a normal time, it's really yourself, right?
Mm.
All of the wealth that we develop and achieve over our lifetime really comes from in here and in here, right? It comes from transforming our ideas and our desires, taking action on those ideas and converting them into something. And so right now, we're living in interesting times because basically it seems like the rug was pulled from under our feet, right, 3 months ago. And a lot of people, depending on what business you're in, suddenly everybody's went into panic mode and didn't know like what's going to happen. So what I realized at that time is that this isn't just a motto about, your number one asset. It really is the truth. When you think about it, nobody's going to care about your life and your finances more than you are. And so right now, to me, the number one message is that you have to take responsibility for yourself. You have to think on your feet. You have to reinvent yourself, and you have to realize nobody's going to come rescue you, right? The government's not going to rescue you. Yeah, they might send you $1,200, but so what? What happens after that money runs out? You have to totally focus on, if my reality has changed, how can I change that? For example, I have a friend who owns 3 businesses here in town, 3 very successful restaurants, been in his family for 80 years, but these were sit-down restaurants, right? So for the first month, he just kind of sat, okay, employees need to go home. But after a while, he kept thinking like, okay, well, we're a sit-down restaurant. We're not allowed to operate at full capacity. Later, he was only allowed to operate at 25% capacity, 50% capacity. Eventually, he said, you know what, like, I have to reinvent myself. I have to basically start providing food for carryout, food for delivery, right? Doing something that was out of his comfort zone. But that's essentially what you need to do to survive in these turbulent times. The economy just opened up to 75%, and now they're saying it's going to go back to 50%. So who knows what the future is going to be? But the point is, you can't just sit there, right, and say, oh, poor me. You have to basically just constantly try to stay one step ahead of the situation and always reinvent yourself. So to me, that's the number one message. The number one asset is yourself.
With yourself. So in these times, Alex, what is necessary to survive a financial crisis?
The most important thing I would say comes down to 2 things. Number one is you got to have cash. So whether it's cash already in your bank or whether it's access to credit that you, like a line of credit that you can pull on and have cash to survive, because cash is like oxygen for your business, right? Cash is like oxygen for your family. So if you run out of cash, you're basically going to be in a very tough position. So the number one thing that I advise people is get a hold of some cash. If you don't have any, start generating some, even borrow some. But the point is cash, right? Because if you don't have cash, you can't pay your debts. If you can't pay your debts, suddenly your mind starts going into like a lot of stress. Yeah. And so cash is the number one thing. The other thing is time. You have to buy some time. So for example, if you have a mortgage coming due, or you have a property that you can't make payments on, or you have something, rent even, right? You have to talk to people, you have to basically negotiate, and you have to ask them for more time. You have to basically say, look, right now I don't have the money, but if you give me 60 days, work with me. And let's see here. Okay, you have to basically ask people for time, so negotiate a better position for yourself. You might not have the payment that's coming due this week, but if you ask for 30 days, in those 30 days, you just start thinking about ideas and you can come up with the cash. The point is you need cash, but if you don't have the cash, then you definitely have to negotiate and ask for time.
Right. That's probably a first-time conversation for a lot of people, I imagine.
Yes. I mean, a lot of people are not used to negotiating. A lot of people are not used to asking, but you can't be shy in these times,
You have to step up, right? This is one of those times where you just have to step up and not let the fear stop you for taking action and asking for that additional time, as you say.
Correct, because who knows, maybe in those 30, 60 days, how about if you sell a property? How about if you sell some assets? How about if you land a new client? A lot of things can happen. How about if you negotiate a line of credit, right? Or an extension. So the point is, time buys you more ability to do something and to generate that cash to keep going to the next step.
So we heard you say that us is the most important asset.
Yeah.
So you gotta keep yourself healthy, right? So that you can get stuff done, number one. And the mindset is so important, along with the cash and time that you just elaborated. Now, what would you say is the most important lesson during crisis?
I would say the most important lesson that I've kind of learned is that you have to basically build reserves, right? We have to go back to the basics. And the number one thing, I used to be more focused in the past on telling people you have to become debt free, which I think is still a very high priority. But I would say right now, the number one priority is to build up reserves. A lot of times during good times, businesses operate on a very thin cash margin because you say, well, I'll make a sale, I'll just make another sale. Right? But what happens if you stop making sales? What happens if your receivables don't come in? What happens if clients suddenly drop you? Right? All of a sudden, those bills are still coming in, but if you don't have reserves, your whole business could come crashing down, like what we've seen with so many businesses. Why are so many businesses filing for bankruptcy right now? Because they ran out of cash, they didn't have reserves. A lot of businesses spent their money buying back stock. And so I think more than ever today, it's important to focus on having reserves, cash in the bank, gold, any kind of reserve that basically you can turn into money at a later point in time. And I think that that's the most valuable asset, strategy right now. The second most powerful strategy is, I would say, focus on paying off debt, especially high interest debt. A lot of people have grown complacent and finance everything with credit cards and just let those credit cards charge them interest, but the interest rate that you pay on those credit cards could be easily 25 or more %. And that you end up paying 2-3 times more than what you borrowed. So to the extent that you can basically focus on paying off debt, I would say that's the other major thing, right? And as I said before, we just have to constantly try to assess our situation. What can I cut back on? How can I reinvent myself? What is essential in my life? This word essential has come up ever since this crisis started, right? The whole goal is we have to become essential, and then we have to cut out the things that are not essential, which goes into another strategy of mine that, I'd like to share with you.
Absolutely. And as you said, what I'm hearing is that really you have to have a plan of action. And if you would, Alex, share the plan of action that you've been sharing with your clients. I think it's really valuable, a valuable method that people can take into their lives at this point.
Right. We as Americans are used to enjoying a lifestyle of, pleasure, of luxury, of, like I said, financing a lot of things. But when this crisis began, and since it's still ongoing, it might be with us, who knows, for another year or so, I've told people you have to kind of break things down, all of your expenses into 3 buckets. You have to basically go back, pull out your last statement, maybe over the last 30 days or 60 days, your bank statement, your credit card statement, and analyze each of these things into 3 buckets. I call them the red bucket, the green bucket, and I call it the yellow bucket, So I want to explain what these are because it's a very simple concept, just like in driving, right? What does red mean? Red means you stop. So red means any expense that is totally non-essential, that you don't need right now, that you could save money by getting rid of it, get rid of it immediately, cut it out of your life. This could be anything like a gym membership. It could be a subscription to something. It could be, just any expense that you're going to find tons of them, right? Going out to the restaurants 5 times a week, anything that can save you money and that's not a necessity, cut it out and immediately free up that cash flow. So that's a red bucket expense. Green bucket is the opposite. Green bucket expense is something that is essential and that you have to be able to find a way how to pay it no matter what, right? So this could be like your home payment on your mortgage so that you don't lose your house. This could be your rent payment. This could be food. This could be gas to go to work. This could be your internet so that you have an internet connection and you can, work with other people. So these are like absolutely essential expenses that you must keep no matter what, and that need to get paid first. And then the yellow bucket is basically an expense that is green right now if you have the money, but that if things get tight, if you lose a client, if something doesn't happen, you'll immediately cut it out, right? This could be, for example, in my life, when this crisis happened, we were paying for piano lessons for our kids. And I just kind of told the teacher, look, I don't know what the circumstance is going to be. I really like working with you, and I'll keep you going on a month-to-month basis. But if something bad happens, we might have to just say goodbye, until this crisis resumes. And so could be Netflix. It could be lots of things, right? I can't tell you what it is in your life, but basically, I think if you adopt this approach of the red bucket, the green bucket, and the yellow bucket, I think that you'll suddenly free up a lot of cash and start building up those reserves that we were talking about. So hopefully
Alex,
this is pretty clear.
So as people, take in this methodology and they start saving money from their red and yellow, where is that money going to?
Well, the first thing is I always tell people that in your mind, you have to kind of break things up into two separate categories, right? There's things that are basically expenses, and there's things that basically are assets that are going to build up your wealth. So what I usually explain to people is I literally have two accounts. Every time I get paid, every time I make payroll, I put part of my money into the expense bucket and part of my money into my savings bucket. So for example, the home equity goes into the blue or the savings account. The interest literally goes into the red account. So even though both of those go to the mortgage company, that's how I split it up mentally and physically. So I always tell people a concept that I teach in my financial freedom seminar. It's called pay yourself first. I didn't invent this concept. I learned it from a book that's almost 100 years old called The Richest Man in Babylon. But in that book, he teaches this concept about pay yourself first, right? So many people basically spend 100%. They make $100, they spend $100. They make $1,000, they spend $1,000. The idea here is that if you set aside a minimum of 10% and you put it aside, then you are not allowed to spend that money. You can only live on the 90%. And that 10% is what's basically going to go towards savings, towards investments, towards reserves, towards life insurance, towards your future retirement. That bucket is going to serve for a lot of things, but you'd be surprised how a lot of people, they live off, at best they save 1% and they spend 99%. And actually a lot of people, they don't even save anything and they spend 110%. So that's why a lot of people constantly are struggling with debt. But when I teach this concept to people, as simple as it seems, and people start putting it into practice, you'll be surprised at how quickly they can start taking advantage of the money they make to become debt-free and to become financially free in a very short period of time.
So the two accounts, short-term and long-term, I love that, to be able to, really, it's pay yourself first is a philosophy that I certainly live by as well. And this is a very key lesson. So what are the typical objections when you tell and advise your clients to do this?
Most people are used to putting everything in the checking account. They're kind of like, why would I need two accounts? They think it complicates things, whereas I think it simplifies things, because mentally, the money in the red account, the checking account, is not meant for investments, and vice versa. The money in the blue account is not meant to be spent on vacations. Those are two separate concepts. So I like to think of it, like you said, short-term, long-term, expenses versus savings and investments. So I kind of just put them into two separate buckets, mentally and physically. But I haven't found too many people who object. The people who put it into practice actually find that it works. It's just that simple.
It's discipline, right?
Right. It's just developing habits, and that's what success is, right? Just habits over and over and over again.
And I believe that if you work with the banks, you can have an automatic transfer. If you bring in all your money into your checking, you can actually have an automatic transfer into a savings, and you don't even have to take any action on it, right?
Right, and that's the best thing is if you can set up automatic deposit into these two accounts, then it simplifies life for you. You don't even have to think about it.
Mm-hmm. You don't even miss it.
Right.
And it's really interesting, like you had mentioned, in terms of setting percentage of your funds into different purposes. So I think you have something kind of as an example to talk through it. So I'm going to see if you can take us through what that can be like.
Yeah, so basically, I teach people a concept called becoming your own bank. And what that concept is basically all about is that if you leave the money in the savings account, banks today don't pay you any money, right? They pay you basically zero interest. And yet if you want to borrow money from them, they charge you an arm and a leg in terms of interest. So what I teach people is that after you pay yourself, it should be 10% minimum. It could be as much as you can, 10, 20, 30, 40%. But if you divert a good percentage of this money into a special account that is basically a form of life insurance that pays you interest and dividend and living benefits, what that does is it automatically protects your family. So it sets up protection because none of us have our life bought or guaranteed, right? We could all be gone tomorrow, especially now with coronavirus. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know who's susceptible. We don't know what the real mortality rate is. Everybody's got an opinion. But the point is, if you have basically your family and your wealth protected, right? If something bad happens to you, your family will be taken care of. But with this type of account, the money that you put in is not only for life insurance, it serves as a reserves. And that money, basically, then you can borrow the money back out and you can use it towards debt acceleration, which is that purple box there. You can accelerate how much debt you basically borrow from yourself, or you can use it towards investments, right? It could be for investments in your business. It could be investments in real estate. It could be investments in lots of other things, but I emphasize that it's very important for people to focus on something that generates cash flow. For example, in one of my companies, I have something that I call the Housing Income Fund, and I pay people, an interest rate every quarter. And so something that's generating a steady rate of return, because a lot of people emphasize stock market too much. And look, I've worked in the stock market for 20 years. But what I've learned is that the stock market gives, maybe for 9 years in a row. And then suddenly in the 10th year, boom, it takes away. And then you have to kind of start all over again, right? And it just becomes really stressful, especially as you get older and you get closer to retirement age. Putting all your eggs into the stock market basket, can be very, very stressful for a lot of people. So I basically emphasize, look, set aside some money, put it into the safe bucket of life insurance. Put some money into something that generates a steady rate of return, become debt free. But if you roll all that money through that strategy, then it sets you up in a way that if you don't do it that way, you're basically got your money all over the place, but it's not integrated into one wholesome strategy.
So would you perhaps help us with the difference? Because 401k, as people know it, is something you can borrow against as well, and you get to control what you invest, the portfolio and so on, depending on what company you work for, right? And I was lucky enough to work for IBM. We had that pretty good setting. How would you say the fundamental differences between what you're proposing and the 401k as people are most familiar with?
Right. So there's a couple differences. One is, in a traditional retirement account, like a 401k or an IRA, you're contributing pre-tax dollars. And so you're basically saving the tax today, but you're going to have to pay that tax down the road, right? With the strategy that I propose, you pay the tax today, and basically the money that you put in grows tax-free. So it's kind of like a Roth IRA type of concept. The difference is that in the typical IRA or 401k, people are investing the money into the stock market, which, as I said, has a lot of volatility, and there's not a money manager in the world that's going to guarantee what that money is going to be worth 30, 40 years from now when you retire. In this other approach, the money is not invested in the stock market. It's invested in income producing assets like bonds or whatever the insurance company is investing in. And basically, they give you a minimum guarantee of what that is going to do year after year after year. They show you an illustration, but it can actually do a little bit better if you get some dividends. So some people might scorn and say, well, geez, if I only make a 4% return, I could probably make 10% in the stock market. And I say, well, yeah, but that 3 or 4% is guaranteed and compounded over years. It really starts to make a difference, and it's on an after-tax basis. Whereas in an IRA, if you have the money exposed to the volatility of the stock market, we saw what happened even just in March, right? The stock market fell more than 30%. Fortunately, a lot of it's come back, but now that people are talking about the economy might shut down, a lot of the clients I talked to are kind of scared that the stock market might come down again. So it's all just a matter of kind of preferences. Would you rather expose your money to the risk and volatility of the stock market? If you can sleep well at night, then do it. But if you'd rather,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, if you'd rather take something that's a more conservative approach where your money only goes up and up and up every year and never goes down, I kind of like that approach, And as I said, and as an extra benefit, the death benefit that this policy accrues over time grows consistently year after year. And I've seen people who can grow into a multi-million-dollar death benefit that they can leave for their family. And so it's a pretty interesting strategy, like this outline shows you here. These types of strategies, they have 3 functions. One is protection through the life insurance. 2 is savings through what money that you put in. And 3 is that you can borrow up to 80-90% of the money that you put in. So it serves almost as a line of credit. And the whole purpose of this strategy is to essentially replace the banks out of your life, because banks, as I said, they don't pay you anything, and yet they charge you a ton of money. Here, basically, you earn money while you don't take the money out, but when you do take it out, you're basically borrowing at a net cost to you of 1 to 2%, and you're growing the protection for your family, because you never know when you're going to go. I've seen people, who die prematurely in their 30s. Some people live up to their 90s, so it doesn't matter. But this serves, in my opinion, as a good alternative to just sticking all your money into an IRA. You could have both. They're not necessarily incompatible with each other.
And that was a question that I wanted to ask you, is if somebody wanted to have more than one option, that they could actually have an IRA and do this life benefits. But you also mentioned another term that maybe some people may not be aware of. You mentioned Roth IRA. Can you explain that for some of the listeners who may not be familiar with that term?
The Roth IRA?
Yes.
So Roth IRA is basically a retirement account, again, where you pay the taxes today, and all the growth of that investment is tax-free for the rest of, till you take out the money. So that's basically the difference between a traditional IRA, where you don't pay any taxes today, but you're going to pay them when you turn 60 or 70 when you take the money out. I personally like to just get rid of the taxes today, especially today is a great time to pay taxes. I'll tell you why. Ever since President Trump came into office, the first thing he did was to cut taxes. But most people don't realize that those taxes are only going to be in place till 2025, right? So if he gets reelected, we are probably going to have those tax rates for 2025. If he's not reelected, they might go up as soon as he's gone, right? So right now is a good time to pay taxes rather than take a risk and roll the dice and see what tax rate you get 10 years from now. So I kind of like the concept of paying taxes today at a lower tax rate than taking a risk with my retirement money. Who knows what the taxes are going to be, especially with where our debt is going. We're at 25 trillion now, so I hate to speculate what the debt's going to be by the time I retire.
Yeah, it's frightening, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be pretty scary.
Mm-hmm.
So Wow, there's just quite a few things to consider. At this point, I think folks are more concerned about how best to really grow more, like make the money work for you, as they like to say. Any other recommendations you like to have? This being your your own bank does take some time to build out. It doesn't quite happen overnight, right? So it's definitely a strategy to approach as early on as you can. Pay yourself first, and as much as you can, 10% or more, as you mentioned. Yet, is there any other ideas that you could help folks to kind of perhaps change what they have already in place, so that the money they have can work for them better?
Yeah. So, for example, I usually tell people that the best investment you can make is to actually pay your debts off. Most people don't realize how much money they end up paying in interest over their lifetime. But when I sit down with people, I work out a month by month game plan so that they can basically, and we analyze all of their situation. We analyze all of their assets. We analyze all of their debts. And we say, okay, look, you've got these credit cards, you've got this student loans, you've got this, house loan, house mortgage, you've got this car loan. How much, I always ask them, how much are you paying on each of them, right? And so people usually say, well, on this one, I get this is my minimum payment and I send an extra $10. And on this one, I send an extra $100. It's almost like people take the shotgun approach, right? And so when I show people and I say, look, it's all about cash flow. And if I can show you how to get out of a debt that you have, instead of over a 20-year or 30-year time frame, if I can show you how to get out in 3 years, would that be of interest? If I can help you save hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime, would that be of interest? Of course. And once I show people the power of paying off debt early, their eyes just usually go like this and they say, why didn't I meet you 20 years ago, right? And then what I also show them is that if you can use this bank on yourself strategy to essentially use the same money that for example, you're paying on a car. For example, I have a client who's paying $500 on a car, right? So what I tell him is, look, send $550 to the insurance company. And if you borrow back the $500 that you need for your car, then basically that same money is working for you in two places. On the one hand, it's building up for you wealth and it's building up for you protection for your family, for your daughter. On the other hand, you're basically taking the same money back out and paying off your debt, like you had. As soon as you finish paying off your car, guess what? Now you don't have that car payment anymore. You pay yourself back in the insurance plan so that you have the money there for the next car or so that you can roll it over for the next debt. So imagine if you're basically, I've done this with people who are replacing 25% credit cards with a 5% policy loan from their bank and yourself plan. So when you think about this, the cost savings, it's kind of hard to explain without going through an actual illustration, but you can just imagine, right? If you're stuck in something that's charging you a very high interest rate versus something that's a low interest rate, it just kind of makes money. And if for every dollar that you put into these plans, you get, depending on your age, $2, $4, $6, $7 of life insurance, it's like, how do you not win, right? There's no IRA, 401k, or rental property that can give you all these benefits at the same time. Because those other assets, once you put the money in, you can't take it out, right? If you put the money in to a rental property, how do you take it back out? If you put the money into the 401k, yeah, you can borrow it or you can take it out prematurely, but you're going to pay a penalty. Here, it's like you got the money working in both places at the same time. But I think, to me, like for most people, the most powerful thing that I show them is become debt-free. There's a lot of experts who say, look, there's good debt and bad debt. In my opinion, there's no such thing as good debt. All debt is bad debt eventually. All the companies that go bankrupt, they go bankrupt because they had debt, right? Debt is good during good times in the economy, but as soon as the economy goes down, suddenly the good debt becomes bad debt. So to me, it's a philosophical thing, but I've been doing this long enough to where I've seen a lot of people who made a lot of money in the good years, and then suddenly the recession shows up or a crisis like we're living in today, and then suddenly they say, geez, what am I going to do with all that debt? Go bankrupt? Well, no, that wasn't the game plan. I'm not in this game to make a lot of money and then lose it all in 1 year or in 1 month, right?
I want to ask you this question in regards to other options. What is your take on, and we talked about IRA, Roth, the insurance. What do you think about real estate?
So I think real estate is a very personal decision for people. Everything that I've done in the last 20 years is work with home building companies, analyze home building companies. So I understand the real estate industry inside and out. And yet precisely because of that, I was actually one of the few analysts who saw the housing bubble right as soon as it popped back in late 2005, early 2006. And I advised my clients, time to sell everything, time to get out, because home prices are going to collapse. And a lot of people thought I was crazy. Well, as we all know what happened, right? And there was a lot of speculators who just thought the way to wealth was just to like load up on real estate and flip properties. And there was lots of people giving seminars on how to make a quick buck flipping properties. And like I was saying, it's great. Real estate is wonderful as long as the prices are going up. But as soon as the prices start going down, all of a sudden real estate is not that wonderful. The other thing is a lot of people say, okay, well, what if I rent the houses? And I say, okay, well, you can do that too, but it's a lot of work. And if you're a beginner and you don't know, what goes into real estate and redevelopment, contractors can take you for a ride. They could charge you twice what it costs to replace a floor or to replace a faucet or whatever. So it takes a little bit of time. Like I said, if you like it, by all means, I do it. It's not my personal cup of tea, but obviously there's people who've made plenty of money and they receive income, having a portfolio like that. But basically, like, in my opinion, again, we saw this happen right now. A lot of people started getting Airbnb portfolios, right? They say, okay, hey, I can rent out Airbnb and make more money than having a single tenant. Well, yeah, that's until the virus, suddenly nobody wants to rent your property and then you're stuck with the debt. So now what do? So now we're hearing stories of the opposite, people who are losing their shirt because they got in over their skis with too many Airbnb rental properties. So like I said, real estate is a wonderful thing over the long term, but every time there's a recession, there's lots of people who can go bankrupt in real estate. So it's, you have to be conservative as well, no matter what. Even with real estate, I still say, fine, buy the real estate using debt, but pay down the debt. Don't just keep levering up, because you never know when suddenly all that levering up is going to backfire. Maybe I'm just too conservative, but that's just my 2 cents on that topic.
And nowadays, especially with technology being so advancing, quite a few folks are thinking about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, all that stuff. Any advice on that?
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert on cryptocurrency. I certainly didn't make $1 in Bitcoin. I missed, I guess, that whole thing, but I frankly don't regret it, because just yesterday I was looking up on Google how many cryptocurrencies there are. And I don't know if you'd like to take a guess, but I was surprised at how many cryptocurrencies there are today. The answer is over 2,000.
Yes, there's a lot.
Right? So to me, the question is as follows. How do I know which cryptocurrencies are good and which ones are scams? How do I know which one is going to be popular and which one's going to fizzle out? How do I know which one's going to be around 10 years from now, right? And whether I can even do anything with that cryptocurrency. I had some people that I know who were clients of mine who basically got involved in a cryptocurrency recently that was supposedly backed up by gold. Well, it turned out to be a multi-level marketing scheme, right? That eventually had crypto and gold and this and that. Long story short, all those people lost all their money, right? And the only way to basically make money was by recruiting other people. And I always tell people, if the way you make money is by recruiting other people, like, be very careful. There was another cryptocurrency. I'm trying to remember what the name was, but it was very famous. It grew a lot, and then suddenly the founder disappeared. I think a couple years ago. She just disappeared overnight, and all of a sudden everybody lost all their money. So to me, I'm personally, just like I said, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but if I'm going to invest in gold, I'd rather invest in the physical coins. That way it's my asset and nobody else's, rather than in some gold-backed crypto or whatever. To me, I just like to keep it simple.
Do you think that it's here to stay?
I think some version is here to stay. Yeah, I think some crypto is probably going to win in the end of the day. For example, when Facebook announced their Libra crypto, I thought maybe this is the one. I think at the end of the day, what's going to happen with these cryptos is maybe one or two or very few are going to win, and all the other guys are going to be losers. And that's the trick, is how do you know which one's the winner, right? And even the federal government didn't like Libra, because all of a sudden, Facebook would have more control and more sway over everybody on the planet, right? Imagine if overnight 1 billion people signed up to their cryptocurrency. Suddenly, like, the dollar doesn't have as much sway as it did. So like the US government right away put the kibosh on that thing, and they said, nope, we don't want Libra unless we can control it.
That is so interesting.
So,
it is
like
true.
I said,
so many out there.
I leave the cryptos to other experts, but I'm not an expert in it. But I kind of think that by the time we figure out which one's the winner, might be too late. But I also think if you happen to invest in a loser, you might regret it. So if you do put money into cryptos, make sure it's money you can afford to lose.
Well, that's true.
It's a matter of percentage, isn't it? You divide up the money. Some goes into a bit riskier investment, but not a whole lot.
And that's another question, Alex, is risk, right? Some people may be risk averse. I think that's probably a question that you ask your clients, is how much risk are they willing to take, and how that plays into their plans. Is that true?
Yes. Well, everybody's got, just like we all have different personalities and we all have different temperaments, we all have different risk profiles. But the thing is, most people, if you ask them, look, here's option A, this one makes 5%. Here's option B, this one makes 10%. And here's option C, this one makes 20%. Guess which one most of them like? Well, they say, I'll take option C, I want to make 20%, right? But if I tell you that 5% is for sure and 20% has a 50-50 chance of happening, then all of a sudden they might still pick that option. But when it comes down to reality, and they see that some months they make 20% and the other months they lose 20%, all of a sudden they're out there like, hey, what's going on? What's wrong? Well, there's this thing called risk, remember? Oh, well, I don't really think I want that. I think I'm going to take the 5% option for sure. So it's just, you don't know until you're there, right? We might all say that, yeah, I'm willing to take on risk. But the reality is that not everybody has the same risk profile. So you have to kind of just learn, sometimes by a little bit of experience, what is your risk tolerance? That's why, like, the advice about don't put all your eggs in one basket is very true, because like we were talking about, maybe if you want to be a bit of a risk taker, you want to put some money, almost like a lottery ticket, into a crypto, fine, do that. But I wouldn't put my life savings into no crypto. By the same token, if you put your money in the bank account, it's super safe, but it's paying you 0%, that might not be a very good idea either. So we have to sort of find some happy middle, and that happy middle is different for each person.
And we got a question from the audience today, and this is probably a question quite a lot of people are asking. Basically, it's about people who have no debt and yet no money at 60 years of age or even older. How to start in times when there are just no jobs available, and he is also overqualified for a lot of the jobs that are open right now. Would you advise them to do what? Really focusing on what next?
Well, I know this might sound, harder than it might be to apply it, but I really think that the biggest lesson that we're going to take away from this crisis is that we have to get away from having an employee mindset. And we
Yes, I
have to be
agree.
willing to take the risk to become an entrepreneur. Even if it's selling cookies, even if it's selling Mexican food, even if it's selling, arts and crafts, we all have different talents that we don't know, right? Some people could be music teachers, some people could be language teachers, some people could be, the next Bill Gates or the next, Steve Jobs. We don't know, but I think to the idea that you can be a freelance person and that you can put yourself out there, with the skills that you have, and just learn to take that leap of faith and become an entrepreneur. Become your own boss. It sounds scary at first. I used to be an employee, when I first started, and I never thought someday I'd be a business owner, but circumstances got me there. I left in the middle of the housing bubble, crashing. I left my safe job. But guess what? I went from making, $60,000 salary to making $1 million in the first year that I started my own business. So sometimes these negative circumstances can be the best thing that ever happens to you if you take a leap of faith and bet on yourself, right? Because if you don't bet on yourself, who's going to bet on you? Nobody is. But if you put yourself out there and you say, look, here's my new business venture, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm selling, here's how I can help you, right? At the end of the day, what is money? Money is nothing more than the value that you exchange with another human being for what you know, right? For how you can help them, what problem you can solve for that person. And if you can solve a problem or a need that somebody has, they'll be more than happy to pay you money. And how do you make more money? Well, instead of helping one person, you help 10, right? And once you help so many that you can't help them all yourself, guess what? Instead of looking for a job, now you're hiring people and you're offering jobs because you say, look, I'm getting so many leads and referrals. I need help to service all these people, right? And so all of a sudden you make money by leveraging yourself, by basically hiring other people, outsourcing part of what you do. And so that's how you make money, is basically you have to basically stop looking for a job and start looking, how can I become, again, my own best asset, my best investment? How can I add value to the world? And how many people can I serve? And that goes to another topic, which is kind of marketing. Marketing is simply putting yourself out there and saying, look, here's who I am, here's what I do, here's my message, here's how I can help you. If you'd like to talk, let's talk. At the end of the day, what is business? Business is just people talking to other people, getting to know you better. How can you help me? How can I help you? How can we help each other? And that really is, it sounds like I said simple, but at the bare roots of it, that's really what it is.
Well, Alex, you have provided so much information today. You have poured into us so much that I know that there are some people that are interested in what you have to offer, how they work with you. And I believe you have something for our listeners for free.
Right.
So before we get there, I know that you have touched so many things and you have this summary
Oh,
that
I
could
love
really
it. I
sort
love
of
that.
give us the whole
Enchilada.
discussions, we had done today. So, Alex.
Yeah. So basically, what I put together here is just a contrast between how most traditional financial advisors approach the topic of money and how I've approached it through my financial freedom classes. So most people will advise you, you want life insurance, buy a term insurance, buy what's called IUL. It means a universal insurance. And I think there's a better plan called, the Bank on Yourself program, which I'm happy to tell people, more about. But basically, like I said, it helps you protect your family, grow your wealth, and you can borrow money to finance your purchases. People say borrow money from the banks, so that you can buy real estate or build a business. I say learn how to, become your own bank and borrow from yourself and keep the interest for yourself. People say invest in a IRA, 401k, I say, fine, do that, but also, try this other approach and weigh the differences and see which one you like better. People say invest in the stock market, and I say that's cool if you can find the next Amazon or the next, Google. But for every Amazon and Google, there might be a lot of other stocks that might just make you go crazy through the volatility. So I kind of tell people, invest in yourself, invest in becoming debt free. Like I said, a lot of people, we already talked about real estate and rental homes. That works for some people. For some other people, I've talked to them and they say, well, geez, that's more of a headache. You have to kind of find yourself what personality, what works for you. Like we said, some people like cryptos or multi-level marketing. Good. If it works for them, great. But for most people, I would just advise become an entrepreneur. Learn how to sell yourself, learn how to invest in yourself. Find something, that basically generates you cash, generates you passive income. That's kind of been my goal, is to help create a vehicle that I've created. It's something, one of my businesses called Diamond Crest Capital. I share with people how they can make predictable passive income investing in my fund. That's, again, something more for a one-on-one discussion. But at the end of the day, the thing that I'm most passionate about is that last point there: live a destiny-driven life. So what that means is I work with people to show them a step-by-step process, how you can transform your dreams and your desires so that you live the life of your dreams, right? Over the last 20 years, I have a mentor called Peter Daniels, who is a very elderly gentleman who's out of Australia. He's in his late 80s now, but he showed me this process. And I've accomplished everything that I've ever dreamed in my life. I built, my dream home. I have luxury cars. I travel the world. I've almost visited 50 countries now. I started my Dare to Dream Foundation to help, poor children in third world countries. Like, I found the woman of my dreams, basically, I'm not here to brag, but I'm just telling you that if you can visualize it, if you can set it on paper, if you can do a vision board like John Assaraf teaches, all these things can become real if you work at it and you keep it in front of you. And it's just a philosophy that I live by. And for me, it's worked out great. I always tell people, if you just let your dreams sit in the air and you never do anything, guess what? Nothing's going to happen. But if you put them on paper and you start working towards them, then all of a sudden, all the pieces start coming together, right? And that happens. And so to me, I think that that's the coolest approach to life, is just having dreams, having goals, and just working hard to make them reality.
Wonderful summary. So here we go.
I agree.
Alex's free gift. Lots of information in there. Please tell us some more about it, Alex.
Yeah, so basically, a few years ago, I guess about 8 years ago, I took the time to write all of my philosophy around money, and I put it down into this book called Financial Freedom. And it teaches you how to live a life of abundance and success. And I take you step by step through my philosophy. And basically, I'm happy to give your viewers a complimentary copy if they just request it. All they have to do is go to our website, and I think you guys have a link there, and you can just request it, and we'll email you a PDF copy, and hopefully you enjoy it.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much. That is a value. That is definitely a big value add on top of everything that you've shared. And I hope that our listeners here take you up on that, because that is something that actually I'm going to go download myself. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
Great, you're welcome.
Thank you for the gift. And I'm sure there are folks that would want to work with you. And here you go, everyone. Reach out to Alex on his website or Facebook, or send him an email.
Yep. Yeah, I'm happy to reach out and talk to you. If there's anything I can do, feel free to reach out.
And you're bilingual, right?
Yes, I speak Spanish 100% fluent, and English.
There you go. I love it.
I think we have a couple of questions, but we're running out of time. So we're going to make sure that Alex get back to you on the questions.
Okay.
All right. Let me just double check here if there's any quick ones we can tackle. Someone mentioned about the massive competition online. Now that we have sort of some limitation, right, doing business face to face, any advice that you would provide to be able to stand out and do it better than others?
Well, believe it or not, Zoom, I think, is the answer for our times, right? I think I've connected more face-to-face with people in the last 3 months, especially in the last month through Zoom, than I did in the last 3 years. So to me, I think that's what sets you apart. If you want to interact with people, jump on Zoom. I think it just has a different angle rather than phone call or through email. The last thing I would do is try to market to people through email. I think just trying to establish a face-to-face, there's nothing like human connection. I don't care if we're 1,000 miles away or if I don't for another year, having this face-to-face connection is what it is. At the end of the day, business is just human to human interaction.
Right.
Human relation.
And I'm a believer that there actually is no competition because everybody has a unique, just like you said, Alex, everybody has a unique gift. They have a unique skill. They have a unique experience. So there really is no competition. It's just a matter of what you said, Alex, is get out there and just start talking to people.
Yep.
Well said, Pat. I agree, right?
Even if somebody doesn't buy from you, they might know somebody who might.
Absolutely.
They might connect you with somebody else.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's really about finding your own clients, right? Your ideal clients.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, it's not easy, but it's not rocket science either.
Right.
So thanks again, Alex. It's so wonderful to have you. And gosh, viewers, please go and download the book and reach out to Alex. Take advantage of Alex's expertise. And Pat, we got some upcoming changes coming this coming month here. Now that we're in summer, July 1st.
July 1st, and we are taking the summer. We're taking July off, and we'll be connecting with our listeners August 26th. And we have a surprise guest that we'll announce as it gets closer to the date. And so we are going now to a once a month talk show.
Schedule, yep.
Yeah, schedule. Absolutely, once a month schedule.
Awesome.
And just stay tuned. Stay tuned with the website and stay tuned on Facebook, and we'll let you know who that secret guest is.
We do have quite some ideas, but if you have any request that you would like us to do, for you, may not be the very next one, but we will definitely take into consideration.
Absolutely. Go to the Facebook page on Town Square Talk, and just tell us, hey, I'd love to hear something on this topic, and I'm sure we can find somebody.
Wonderful. And with money, what would be the quote?
Oh, I love this. This is a quote by Ayn Rand. Money is only a tool. It will take you wherever you wish, but it will not replace you as the driver.
With that in mind, Alex, once again, thank you so very much.
Thank you, Alex.
And everyone have a great summer, a great July. And we'll come back in August, on August 26th. Take care, everyone. Stay safe and be well.
Bye-bye.